everybody's ready. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
The minutes of April 27, 2023.
Move to approve, Walker.
Support.
It's been moved by Walker, supported by Beggs. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Changes to the agenda. Would there be any changes to the agenda? I would like to add the Crystal Dam discussion after Curtis Lohman in the airport. Crystal Dam discussion. Would there be any other additions to the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Would there be any public comment at this time? Hearing none, I'd like to introduce Mr. Kevin Hughes, District 10 Health Officer.
Paul, I don't think anybody made a motion to approve the agenda.
There you go. I'll entertain a motion to approve
Sorry.
the agenda.
I'll make that.
So moved, Walker.
Moved by Walker.
I'll second.
Second by Morris. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Now I'll introduce Mr. Kevin Hughes out of
Public
Cadillac,
comment?
Michigan.
Public comment?
There was none. Any public comment? You've got some.
No, I don't know. I just didn't hear you call for it, that's all.
Go on, Kevin. Mr. Hughes.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Kevin.
I do have copies of our annual report that I'll share with you.
Thank you.
And as part of this year's update, I had been taking around one of our epidemiologists. Actually, Chelsea is the one that had put this presentation together, but she is on vacation this week, so Emily was going to join me, but Emily is tied up with another issue back in the Hart office, so she was hoping to be able to get here. If she doesn't, then you get me to try to go through her presentation, which is always kind of an interesting thing. But within the annual report, they're constructed the same way that they have been previously. The front part of the report really focuses in on success stories or accomplishments within the different divisions that make up the health department, and then the health related data is towards the back end of that report, so people will go to that and they'll look to see where do they compare with the other 9 counties in our jurisdiction. So that is in there. The other thing that I'd like to point out within that is I did stick in a copy of a flyer. The health department is going to be doing our health summits again this year. Last year was the first year we're doing those. We're trying to do those as an annual thing. Last year's focused on our community health needs assessment. This year's summits are going to focus in on environmental health related topics within the jurisdiction. So they're going to do these regionally. There'll be 3 different sessions. The first one will be June 2nd at Kirtland College in Grayling. June 9th would be West Shore Community College, and then June 16th will be Ferris State University. It'll be the same information that would get presented at each of the sessions. So if you're interested in attending, let me know and I can get you registered to go. We're going to do morning sessions, kind of breakfast type sessions this time. Hopefully start 9:30, get you out by 11:30, so you have the rest of the day. So again, if you'd like to attend, let me know and I can get you signed up for that. Okay. Regarding the presentation, as I said, most of what I have been sharing as part of the update is really this presentation on communicable disease. And much like the health summits, this is just another opportunity to kind of showcase or share some of the other data that the health department is monitoring on an annual basis. I mean, everybody knows, wells, septic permits, immunizations, but there's a lot of other things that the health department gets involved in and data that we have to gather. And so this will just kind of be an overview from 2022 in terms of what that data looks like. And so it'll be within the county as well as within our jurisdiction. So I will try to do this and hopefully make sense of it. So just a couple things. This is going to focus in on communicable disease or infectious disease. That is one of those required services that the health department has to be involved in. So healthcare providers are required to report certain communicable diseases. Those diseases that in turn get reported to the health department, and then we in turn have to report those to the state. So that's typically the system. So there's multiple steps in that process. At the end of it, we hope everything is getting reported, but we know there are issues that we run into and we encounter at every different level in terms of getting that data. So we try to do the best that we can. So I thought there was one in here, maybe not. Maybe it's after this. Total for 2022, there were 1,037 communicable diseases that we followed up on within the jurisdiction. And so you've got the breakdown there. 95 of those were related to water or foodborne related issues. Sexually transmitted diseases by far were the largest in our jurisdiction at 667. Respiratory, vaccine preventable, vector-borne, hepatitis, viral hepatitis, and then others make up the different categories that our epidemiologists kind of categorize these into. And it's probably important to note that each of that 1,037, that represents one investigation and most likely a number of contact tracings that have to go along with it. So it's contacting those people that may have associated with an individual. And it's also important to note that number, that 1,037, only represent those investigations, those conditions that actually originated within our jurisdiction. So there are many instances when we will have to be involved in or become involved in an investigation that may actually originate in another community, or they may not know where it originates, but the person was in our jurisdiction. So as an example, last year we ended up with there was a confirmed Legionella infection in a patient from Kent County. Weren't quite sure where that original infection took place, but we know that the person had visited one of our counties and frequented one of the hotels, motels in our area. So as a result of that, we ended up having to go out and do an investigation of this location. We ended up taking water samples to test the water samples to determine if that may be where the actual infection had occurred. So that's just an example of one of those statewide infections that we may get, or investigations that we may get involved in. Probably the most common one are going to be the foodborne ones, where somebody will eat at a restaurant here, they live in another county, they encounter symptoms when they get back home, and we get involved in something like that. So just the number I'm showing and what I'm showing you today are just those that originated within our 10 counties. Let's see here. All right, what am
Hold on just a second, let me see if I can get it to go.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So in this presentation, you'll hear us talk about rates, or you may hear us frequently talk about diseases or conditions in terms of rates. Rates are really a mathematical formula, and it allows us to compare one county to another county, or a county to the state level. So it's just I don't want to say minimizing, but it equates everything so that we can compare one to the other, because we know that county populations differ. You really can't go just simply on percents, so we use rates to differentiate that. Okay, so the water and foodborne illnesses, most common ones that we see, Campylobacter and Salmonella. Those are the two that we see the most in our jurisdiction. Campylobacter typically associated with farm type infections that will occur as a result of individuals having involvement with animals. Typically, you go the oral fecal route, so people will work with farm animals, they won't wash their hands appropriately, and hence contamination will occur that way. Salmonella typically from food, but those tend to be the most common. So if you look under Oceana County there, you know, you will see the rates for those. Here's Emily. It just started, so you can pick up from where I left off.
Sounds good.
Okay? All right. This is Emily Porkowski, one of our epidemiologists. We actually have two epidemiologists that work for District Health Department number 10, and this is her area of expertise, so I've kind of muddled through the beginning part of it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Morning,
Sorry.
Emily.
Morning. Sorry, I had another presentation right before this. It's running around a little bit. All right, so where were we? Foodborne illness? Okay. So, Campylobacter and Salmonella are the most common foodborne illnesses. They're pretty high in our counties just because of the rural. A lot of people have animals. This is the mishandling of animals, not washing your hands, that type of thing. I thought I heard you talking about that when I was coming up the hallway. So we see those cases are pretty high. We have 95 cases of foodborne illness within District 10. Oceana makes up 14% of those cases. Campylobacter, our foodborne illnesses are lower than we've seen in previous years. We saw that big decline right when COVID hit because of all those restrictions and people staying at home. So we saw those lower than they are in previous years. And then also unique to Oceana, we had one case of Neisseria, which makes up that rate of 4 per 100,000. And that is a bacterial infection, usually due to raw pork. It's common in children and during the winter is mostly when we see that.
There's a little bit of delay. There you go.
Oh, okay. Next we have our sexually transmitted infections. Here you'll see we have chlamydia and gonorrhea. We do also track HIV and syphilis. However, they're not reported here because the numbers are too low to protect the individual's identity. However, you will see chlamydia is the highest for all of our counties. That's also the same for the US and for Michigan. In the previous year, we have seen a decrease in chlamydia cases, most likely due to COVID, again, individuals staying home due to lockdown. But however, it has been decreasing for the past 5 years, so we have seen a decline in that. However, for gonorrhea, we saw an increase this year, which was very interesting. Its significance, we thought, due to lack of testing and lack of individuals coming in for health services, we'd see a decline in that. However, rates have gone up. That could be due to antibiotic resistance and individuals potentially getting tested more, but we saw an increase in that. However, for both of these STDs, they are lower than the Michigan average. Like you said, yes, we do test collect information on HIV and syphilis as well, but not reported here.
Can I ask a question on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So is this all active cases? Like, I'm not real familiar with STDs, exactly how they, but from what I understand, once you get an STD, you have it for your whole life, right?
These are treatable.
Oh, okay.
All STDs are treatable. The infections are treatable, but it's diseases that come after. So if you get HIV and then develop AIDS, AIDS is not treatable,
yeah.
but the infection is.
Okay, so these would all be new cases this year?
Yes.
It's not, these aren't like cases that are open kind of thing?
Correct.
Okay.
These are individuals that come in to our clinics or go into a physician's office and get tested. These are all of our
Okay,
cases.
thank you.
The other thing probably, and Emily had mentioned syphilis and HIV, you know, we did receive notification that just what seems to be happening with everything else is the main antibiotic that we use to treat syphilis with has now been identified in short supply. And so trying to see what impact that may have as we move forward.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I see that we have the highest numbers aside from Mecosta. I can understand Mecosta with Ferris. Why would we be so much higher than, you know, Mason or Lake, our neighboring?
I'm not sure exactly. It could just be the number of testing individuals that are going in to the clinics and getting tested. I'm not sure. We'd have to look a little bit more into that. My partner Chelsea may have more information. She was actually the one that did this presentation, so. Moving on.
If you aim it to here,
Oh, aim it
Maybe.
there. Okay.
if not, I can try it. There you go.
Here we go. All right, next we're going to be talking about respiratory infections. We did take out the COVID infections for these because it would skew the numbers so bad. These would be shrink and you wouldn't be able to see them. So our respiratory infections, we have fungal infections and bacterial infections. There are 57 cases of respiratory infections of DHD10. Oceania makes up 22% of those cases. For the first three, they are fungal infections. So we have blastomycosis, and that is at a rate of 4 per 100,000. So this would be when individuals are like in the wooded lands, disrupting soil, or on the lakeshore, disrupting the sand. You can get infections that way. It is common that we typically have 1 to 3 cases per year. There also is the coccidioidomyosis or valley fever. It is an inhaled. It's not as common in the U.S., but it can be found in the southwest United States, in Arizona and California. Mostly individuals over 60 years old are at risk. And we've only had 1 case in the past 2 years. And then there was also histoplasmosis, again another rate of 4 per 100,000. This is more common in DHD10 than other counties. Can be found in bird and bat droppings. Can also be exposed during demolition or excavation projects. That can cause these spores to go airborne. And so those are our first 3. And then we have our bacterial infections. We have Legionnosis, which you have a rate of 4 per 100,000. It can cause some severe pneumonia, Legionnaire's disease, which you've probably heard of, or mild respiratory symptoms, Pontiac fever. There's been an increase in cases in the U.S. since the 2000s. It could be due to better testing, that we're testing for it more often. That's the reason why we see this higher number of cases. But DHD10 is still lower than the U.S. and in Michigan. Then there's also a rate of 26 per 100,000 of TB. It's a highly contagious bacterial infection. They're not required to report latent TB. So that may be the reason why it's so high. It's individuals or clinics that just choose to report it. It's not mandated. But we still do keep track of it because it is highly contagious and can spread fairly quickly. And also the mycelium bacterium that causes that disease normally affects the lungs. And if left untreated, it can be fatal. So, but individuals normally, the reason why it goes so undiagnosed is because the symptoms aren't present when it's in its more resting phase, but it can become an active infection, and that's when it's contagious.
The other interesting thing on the blastomycosis, if you've heard or familiar with the issues up at the paper mill in Escanaba, you heard about those in the news?
Yeah.
That is the fungal infection that is the cause of the issues that they've had up there. As Emily said, typically in Michigan we see about 1 to 3 cases, maybe per year. They've actually had 106 cases at the paper mill, 30 hospitalizations and 1 death attributed to this fungal infection. So actually, if you look, it's actually an endemic. It's an endemic fungal infection. So if you look at a map of the United States, and if you drew a line down from, the would be the western border of Minnesota all the way down to the south, and then over to the east coast. All of those states, typically, this is an endemic fungal infection that is found there. And so a lot of the investigation really right now associated with that site in Escanaba is what triggered it to, become so much of an issue, so much of a problem when it's been around forever, and that has not, it's going to take a while to figure out what that is. But if you've heard about it, that's what that fungal infection is.
Oh, now it's working. Okay, COVID-19 is next, everyone's favorite topic. So these are all our lab confirmed cases, so this does not include the home testing, which does mean that these numbers look a little bit lower than previous years, but again, doesn't mean it's not circulating. It just means that we are not tracking it as well because we are not grabbing those home testing. People may be going asymptomatic and not getting tested, so we do see a big drop here. So Oceania has one of the lower rates. In 2020 alone, we had 24,894 lab confirmed cases. Again, like I said, not necessarily due to the lack of virus being spread, but because of the lack of our home testing. All of the counties together can be simplified into 1 in 10 residents have had a positive PCR in the past year that we know of, and for Oceana that means we've had 2,584 cases last year. Alright, and next we'll move to vaccine preventable diseases. There were 26 vaccine preventable diseases. Oceana makes up 4% of those diseases. Vaccine preventable diseases are pretty low in the U.S. Due to strong vaccination efforts. If the following vaccinations are recommended by the age of 6 to prevent individuals against 12 diseases such as like hepatitis, tendinitis, polio, measles, mumps, chickenpox, those that individuals normally get. These vaccines and prevention against these diseases are important because they can cause long-term illness, hospitalizations, and death. According to the CDC, whooping cough is responsible for about 9,000 deaths every year. But because of vaccines, we've gotten this down to about 10 individuals each year actually die from this disease, from pertussis. For Oceana, there are 14 per 100,000 cases of shingles. Shingles is caused by the retroactive Varicella virus or the chickenpox virus, the reoccurring. This can be a painful rash and can often give individuals who are unimmune or unvaccinated can get the chickenpox virus from the individual that has had the shingles. Just because the numbers are low does not mean you're safe. That's why we still keep track of these and collect this information to see what's circulating, because stuff can continually be brought in by travelers and unvaccinated individuals. And next we have our vector-borne disease. We had 38 cases of vector-borne disease. Vector-borne diseases can be from ticks, mosquitoes, or fleas, but here you'll only see our reportable diseases for ticks. These are our highest number of cases that we have. So Lyme disease is the #1 vector-borne disease. We had 22 per 100,000 cases in Oceana. Yeah, again, being outdoors, having a lot of woods, it's very often people are hiking in nature and pick up ticks, and then don't get tested and then end up with these diseases. Next, we have our viral hepatitis. There were 87 cases, 82 were the chronic hepatitis C. Oceana makes up for 7% of these viral hepatitis cases. All hepatitis can cause liver damage, and most commonly is transmitted by sharing needles, syringes, and other injected drugs. We track chronic hepatitis because acute sometimes can come and go so quickly. The chronic hepatitis is that long-term disease. We have seen a decreased trend in hepatitis cases even before the pandemic. Again, here too we do see a decrease in diseases. Hepatitis C, again, is the most common. It is curable and has been having decreasing rates ever since COVID-19. And these are other conditions that we track within DHG-10. Helpful to know is the streptococcal disease. Oceana and Kalkaska have the highest rate. For Michigan, it is 5 per 100,000, and we have more cases around here. And streptococcal bacteria can range in severity from strep throat to narcosing felicis, which is basically a flesh-eating bacteria that can cause amputation and death. So there is a range from that disease. Also on here we see rabies, and we have individuals, so DHG-10 does testing. If you got bit by something and you're able to capture it, you can bring it in and get it tested. So we have the rabies numbers for animals that were brought in and tested, and then also the number of that we've given for individuals who suspected that they've gotten bit by something that could have rabies. We had no cases of active rabies, but we have had individuals. It's always better to get if you're concerned about it, because once the symptoms are activated, onset, it is fatal. So we've had 18.
And if you bring it in, make sure it's euthanized. We've had situations where individuals have brought bats in and, you know, they, you know, closed it up, sealed it up in a container and it wasn't moving, thinking it was dead. Well, bats will slow down their metabolism and all their body functions, so they're basically not moving around. We've gotten calls back from the lab. The state lab, after it gets shipped down there, they open it up and they don't appreciate that much. So always an interesting experience. And just, you know, in terms of euthanizing it, because we are coming into bat season now, and so if someone finds a bat in the bedroom or in their house, typically, you know, they'll find them in the morning because you're unsure of whether or not you may have been bitten. It's very difficult to tell. It's a good idea to send that, you know, have that bat euthanized and sent in for testing to determine whether or not you may have to proceed with prophylaxis treatment.
So last year we had one animal brought in with rabies, and then we had 18 preps given. And they said bats are the natural carrier in the DSU 10 counties. And then here you'll just see a little bit more about the breakdowns. So PrEP is the highest in Oceania. We have 5 per 100,000 PrEPs given. And then you see the streptococcal as well, which is also fairly high. And I believe that is all for me.
Probably the other thing with rabies, and you don't hear a lot about deaths associated with rabies, but once symptoms of rabies appear, it generally is a fatal condition. And actually our jurisdiction got put on the map probably maybe 10 years, a little farther back, because we had an individual in our jurisdiction who had a bat bite, was bitten by a bat, ignored it, symptoms developed, and by that time it became a fatal condition. And that had been the first death from rabies in a very long time nationwide. So it is not something that you want to mess around with. Best to get it tested and checked out to see if, you know, it is rabid or not. So, other things going on here in Oceana County. I think I've shared with you guys previously the PFAS in the Rothbury area. They are drilling 12 or 13 of those homes in that area are going to get new wells. I checked with Mark yesterday. I think 2/3 of those new wells have been drilled. Hookups will be taking place next week maybe, or the week after. So that's what's going on there. Those homes, provided there's no PFAS there, should be you know, no longer have to use the filters that they have. And then the other thing, we do have the Adolescent Health Center that operates out of Shelby Schools, and then the behavioral health program that we provide for the Heart Schools. I think that's it.
Yes, Kevin, and the behavioral health and heart, we do have a full-time person there
Yes.
in the halls every day. Kentwater, we also have a presence.
Oh, yes.
In
Yep.
Kentwater, we have a presence in Ludington and a presence in Shelby.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit about Mark Hill. This is Mark Hill's last season with us. And if you look at the well and septic side of what Mark has done, have we got that position filled yet, or we're
Nope.
still shopping?
Nope, we are still shopping. We actually, as I shared with our board members, we did have to repost for that position. Obviously, you guys are familiar with the workforce related issues and trying to get new people in. We did post for Mark's position outside. You know, we had 5 individuals, only 5 applied for that position. None of them even met the minimum qualifications, which is a Bachelor of Science degree. So it's back out to try and attract someone. We know that pretty much for any position, you know, we're going to have to train that person. If you know, we can get lucky enough to find somebody with some prior public health experience, well and septic, that's you know, that would be great, but that hasn't happened to us in a very, very long time. So we know we're going to have to invest in training somebody to get them up to speed. And as you said, Oceana County, there will be big shoes to fill, because Mark has been here for extremely long time, knows everybody, knows the community, and so we'll move forward with continuing to try to fill that position.
And could you give the commissioners an overview on the resolution that we passed last week in regards to the state septic code?
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was gonna mention too. You know, every year, since I've been health officer, it seems like there has been an effort to try to implement a statewide sanitary code in Michigan. Michigan is the only state that doesn't have what would be considered a statewide sanitary code. Yes, we have, there are statewide specifications for wells and septic systems that have to be followed. But other than that, each local health jurisdiction has their own sanitary code that may list some other things. This year being no different, they are trying to push through a statewide sanitary code again. The code as written right now would require that all septic systems, whether they be traditional or whether they be an engineered type of system, would need to be inspected every 5 years. And so for us within our jurisdiction, we're estimating that would be an additional almost 33,000 inspections that we would have to do. That would be in addition to all of the other normal work that we do. In a normal year, our inspections jurisdiction-wise probably about maybe 4,000 or 5,000 at the most. This would be on top of that if that were to go through. So the board, obviously, we have one sanitarian that basically covers each of our 10 counties. There's no way that person can do that. The code also, or this code as the bills, I guess I should say, as written, also outline requirements for individuals, because it does allow that you could have contractors that would do that, but it requires that they have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. They have to have so many hours of training from Eagle. They have to do so many inspections, supervised and unsupervised. In essence, the qualifications really kind of go back to a sanitarian that works for a local health department. And so, our board, the board did take action at last Friday's meeting to pass a resolution opposing the bills as written right now for that code. My understanding is they've been shared with MAC and will be available to any other interested county that is interested in them.
Kevin, a couple things. On the sanitary code, the proposed revisions they want, the homeowner will be shocked when they find out how much it's going to cost for those inspections. Not only do they just look in the tank, but they have to dig up the headers going into the drain field, and they have to inspect everything. People have a nice manicured lawns, a sprinkler system, it's going to be dug up every 5 years. And the cost, what did they estimate, a minimum $3,500?
Well, I'm not sure, it's interesting because within the public health code, the public health code provides the local health department the ability to set fees in addition to what the state provides to help offset those costs, because the funding that we get from the state for this does not cover the entire cost of the well and septic program. It's intended to be at a 50-50. So the cost piece is still something that I think it still needs to take a look at. In the bill, it does outline that if an individual, so if Craig, was the manufacturer of one of the engineered type systems, you have like Sledgehammer, or I'm not sure what the other ones are, but if you had a system that you wanted to have certified or made available in the state to be used here, there'd be a $3,000 fee that you would have to pay to get that licensed and on a list of acceptable systems. So there's that fee that's included in the bills. There's also a fee of I think $180 that the local health departments could charge, or that could be charged to those contractors to certify them to go out and do the inspections. And there may be some other fees in there. The other piece associated with this is really, they're counting on state funding being available to get this started. And I think they're looking at maybe $30 million or something. Not enough money to get it up and going. But then sustainability is going to be based off of fees that they're going to get. That's it. it's always kind of a crapshoot as to whether or not those fees will cover the cost of that service. The other problem is going to be, okay, so if we go out and I go to Phil's place and his system is failing, and we say, okay, Phil, you've got to replace the system, and Phil says, I don't have any money to do that. Where is that, how is that going to be handled? There is this year in place, as part of Senator Bumstead's efforts, there was a one-time funding allotment that was made that individuals could apply for funding to replace failed type septic systems. That was one-time funding. It's, after this year, that's gone unless that continues. So, there's just a lot of pieces associated with this that still need to be thought out before we get to this point. So going from absolutely nothing statewide to this there's still some thinking. In concept, yeah, I think in concept, yes, I do support the concept of doing this because I think it provides us a mechanism to identify where you have property where you have the 55-gallon drum buried in the ground, and that's what's being used as the septic system. But logistically there needs to be some things that need to be worked on this.
My understanding too is it's like one-third of the total houses in Michigan.
Oh yeah.
That would fall under this. So $30 million isn't gonna.
Yeah, I think it's about 162,000. Something 250,000, something like that. That would fall underneath it. For us, it would be. And the other thing, when you're doing those, it's not like you can do those inspections 12 months out of the year. Right. At best, you might have 6 months to try and do them. So 33,000 within a 6-7 month time frame would be next to impossible.
Kevin, I'd like to echo what Paul was saying about Mark Hill. When I was building houses, Mark Hill I worked with all the time. You will hire somebody else, but you're not going to replace them.
Nope.
Because not only is he very good at his job, he's very good with the public.
Yep.
And when we think about inspections and things that he has to do, this time is probably on overload for Mark Hill right now because of all the Class 2 wells they have at Double J Ranch that are all shut down all year, and I think they put 5 more in this year. I wouldn't be surprised there's 15 or 20 of them that they have out there that all have to be inspected and have new water samples taken in. And Mark spends a lot of time
Yep.
at the electric forest.
Yep.
With the other inspections at the electric forest also.
Yeah, that is, that's one of that's a huge issue is that, the public health foundation and the knowledge base that you lose. Yes, you can replace a person, but you cannot replace the knowledge that person has within a jurisdiction and within a particular field. The hope is that you get somebody that's going to have some new strengths, but it's not going to be the same as when that is. So yes, there will definitely be a learning curve when the new person, when that new person gets identified and starts here. Our hope is that people will just recognize that it's going to take a little time to get up to where we previously were. But that's something that we're seeing in all of our counties.
Yeah, and Tim, we took special note listening to this with Silver Lake. It's been on the radar now for years at District 10 and where we're at with this. And the 2 bills are moving right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that they are moving through the House and the Senate right now to do this, and the dollars were just tremendous when we got done. And you nor I would be able to build our own septic system anymore. So it's gotten that involved. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about our dental clinic?
Yeah, we finally did, the MCDC, who operates the dental clinic that's on the property of the health department, they were finally able to secure another dentist. That opened back up, I believe, in March. They started to see patients there. Again, actually, I think the dentist came from the Muskegon area or Grand Haven area, and now, working out of the Oceana Clinic. So that clinic is back up and going, seeing patients. And so all of our dental facilities in our 10 counties are operating and being able to see folks. Between The 4 MCDC clinics that we have, the clinics that Baldwin Family Healthcare operates, individuals have to go no farther than 1 county over to get dental services if they need to access dental services through one of those clinics.
And then the tough one, Narcan.
Yes.
Could you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so we did approach, and the board did provide okay to put a Narcan vending machine outside the health department. I don't believe we've ordered them, but like everything else, takes time for them to get here. So once those become available, once that is here, that will be placed outside the building, and Narcan will be available at no cost to anybody who may need it. I've gotten a couple questions, and just for clarification, people saw the FDA is going to make Narcan available over the counter. And that is happening. Michigan has had, due to some legislative action that took place, I think it was 2016, 2017, Narcan has been able to be made available to anybody if they need it. The interesting thing with the FDA's ruling is that, yes, it will be available to anyone, but it won't be available free. There will be a cost associated with it. So, our reasoning for wanting to put this out there was to make it free and available to anybody. We've done some initial assessments within our jurisdiction and finding that the cost is being somewhere between $30 to $40 on the low end, upwards of $100 on the high end that a pharmacy may charge for Narcan if someone were to walk in and get it. So yes, it would be available, but there could be a cost associated with it in other places. So I don't have any numbers to give you. What I can say is, the machine in Wexford County has been out there for probably a month now, I think. And I think when I checked last week, I think we had there were 17 boxes of Narcan that had been accessed and taken by individuals.
Just to follow up on that, Kevin, last week I had the opportunity to talk to a state trooper, a good friend of mine, who worked on the SENT team in the UP, which we know a lot of the bad drugs, came from there. The game is now to get Narcan, and take you as high as you can possibly go before it's fatal, and then use the Narcan to bring you back down.
Mm-hmm.
What a shame.
Russian roulette.
Pardon me?
Mhm.
Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little brief overview of our mental health that we have available in Hart?
Yeah, this is funding that's available to health departments and other healthcare providers, FQHCs, where the intention is to try to get additional behavioral health services into the schools. So we do have licensed counselors that work for the health department that we have placed in different schools around our jurisdiction, Hart being one of them. And this individual will seek students who are interested and they have approval from their parents to see them. And so that has been a pretty popular service in all of the counties. In the counties where we also have a adolescent health center, and this is part of that service, typically the behavioral health visits are larger than the physical health or the primary care type services that we have. Interestingly enough, and I don't think I had it when I was here last time, with our nurse practitioner that operates out of the Shelby site, she actually did receive a phone call from a parent of a student who had access to sports physical through that site, and the parent called to thank her for saving their child's life, because in the course of the sports physical she identified a murmur that had not been picked up before, referred the patient to that child to the primary care doc, who in turn referred the child down to DeVos Center in the child center down in Grand Rapids, and that doctor down there was the individual that told them to make sure that you thank that person for, the first person that identified it, to, that they probably saved the child's life. So I don't believe that student is back in athletics at this point, but is kind of progressing back towards being able to do that. That's my understanding. So that's kind of one of those good stories that you want to share about some of the things that are going on as a result of some of those services that we have going.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah. Hey, thanks again for coming here. Is this you?
No, that is not me as Spider-Man. No, although they told me that.
They
I had to
didn't
do
talk
that.
you into it, huh?
No, they did not.
I guess I have an actual question. So, you know, we're having conversations anyway. So when did the mental health piece of things become your lane versus like community mental health? Can you get into that a little bit?
You know, it's really done in conjunction because we do make referrals to community mental health as part of this. So these funding opportunities really are available to, I mean, community mental health literally could go in and provide that funding if they, or those services if they wanted to. Now they have statutory requirements in terms of the population that they have to serve. And so, you know, historically, the school-based area hasn't fallen into that, so they have to look at utilizing other types of funding to get in there and do that. So in most instances, this is done in collaboration with the local CMHs because there is that referral, you know, mechanism that we're able to make sure that we have in place, so that if our counselor identifies somebody that is beyond their scope of dealing with, we can make that referral back to CMH so that they're able to take care of that individual.
Because it just looks like, that makes sense, but it just looks like, it appears
Yep.
that there's funding sources for mental health and it's going to, you know, 5 different organizations, and it's, you know, so but I understand where that's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are not in the business of trying to compete with somebody else to provide these, you know, services. The counties where we have the school-based adolescent health centers in place, that funding could, you know, the FQHCs or the primary care docs could go and they could apply for that funding to do those same services in the schools if they wanted to. Typically, they kind of stay away from that because of the overhead and having to bring additional staff on to do that. So this is a service that the health departments can be positioned to be able to do that because we employ mid-level providers, NPs. We can go and place them in the schools, but then also have those referral mechanisms back to the primary care docs, so that, you know, if somebody, you know, needs, you know, cuts themselves and needs a stitch in school, they don't have to take the afternoon off to get that done. They can, NP can stitch them up in school, send them on their way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Kevin. Would there be anyone else?
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
Consideration to enter an agreement with Preen and Newhoff. Ms. Biard.
So, Mr. Lohman contacted me yesterday and asked if I would be able to present this to you on his behalf. If not, he was going to be here, but I think I can do it some justice. Learned quite a bit going through this process, and there's some issues out at the airport right now with some surrounding properties that have large trees that need to be cut down, and so and they're on other people's properties. So this agreement would allow us to do an assessment to determine which areas those are and where we could purchase or do land acquisitions for those areas. But we're not actually talking about the land, but the air
Airspace.
above the land, the airspace. So this is just a proposal for the assessment, and the county would be responsible for 5% of that.
Mr. Erickson?
Yes, sir.
I understand the need for the inspection, and just a reminder that Prime Newhoff is one of the only engineering firms who are certified to do work at or around or for airports. You know, you can't put this out on bids, they're the only ones that can do it. But I want to tell my fellow board members, and I do not believe this is the case, but I want to caution. My first year on the board, Oceana County went through an adverse possession to seize property out at that airport. I am not very interested in this getting to that point. And I just want to go on the record that I'm not interested in that at all. Something else would have to be worked out. Thank you, Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Erickson.
Yes, sir.
I would agree with that. I'd be fully against seizing any land. So this proposal is to approve essentially a study of
The engineering, yeah, the
of
study.
what needs to be done, and then the property owners are approached with a proposal. Is that essentially what we'd be approving today?
So, yes, that is correct. But it's not the land that we would be purchasing, it's
Sure.
the air above the land, the
Okay.
airspace.
Okay.
I hadn't heard of that before,
Right.
so
Craig,
it was
isn't,
something new.
Craig, isn't there flight patterns and stuff that they have at the runways?
Yeah.
They've got specific criteria set for that?
Right, FAA does. And that's probably what the problem is.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing this would allow, this would be a study to determine what needs to be cleared out, and then they'll bring a recommendation to us to present to the property owners for, negotiate a solution.
Yeah. And just so you know, Curtis has been, he's been talking with the property owners, and they know that the, some of those trees need to be cut down because of the airspace and, them being in the way, and so he's been.
Have we just gone and asked them if we can go in and cut some trees down? Like, does this require, I don't even remember what the number is.
Contractually, it probably requires
Probably
something.
for,
Yeah.
$60,000 to,
It's
Is
so
this
ridiculous.
one of those things that's partially funded by the Department of Transportation once it's completed?
Correct.
So we only pay like 5% of it?
We're paying the 5%.
We
yeah.
pay 5%.
So we're looking at about $3,000.
So 61,000 is being, yeah, we're paying 3.
I think I should be in the business to determine what trees need to be
Exactly.
cut.
this is,
ridiculous.
this is what I call the brother-in-law rule.
Yeah.
There's always a brother-in-law that ends up on the other end of these contracts. I don't know, maybe I'm just looking too hard at these, but, okay.
Would there be any other questions for Ms. Biar?
I guess I'll just make the statement, I'll probably vote yes, but this just seems like the long way around a short, an easy solution if the ask could be made.
Well, I think with the FAA regs and the continuation of, monitoring that even after the fact
Right.
is why they do the study for it, so.
So they do the study, and then, when they come back with the study results, MDOT gives, well, we would pay up front for, the purchase of that, air, and then, we'd be able to make arrangements with the landowner to do that, but it's all paid for through the state, or federal government,
FAA.
because they're giving the money to MDOT, but otherwise we would be paying full price for that.
Well, our taxpayers are still paying for it, it's just coming through another funnel,
Right.
and spread out, but.
Tim, during my tenure, we released proposals and requested proposals for engineering at the airport. And we had Prime Newhoff, who was certified by MDOT to do it. We had another one out of Illinois do a proposal, and we had one who was getting certified from Southeast Michigan. And so when you have a select group,
Yeah, I get the the company, I just think that it seems like a difficult solution
it's a
to
system
an
that's
easy
wrong.
problem, but that's, as soon as you get the alphabet soup agencies involved, they make things complicated in a hurry, so.
Well, and I think too, after the fact too, is, somebody goes out there and builds a 5-story house. with
Right,
a
yeah, this'll
200-foot
be a-
antenna, or,
Yeah, this will see the issue in the
Yeah,
future, so.
down the road.
Yep.
Would there be any other questions in regards to the airport? Hearing none, I'd like to open a Crystal Valley Dam discussion. Crystal Valley Park also, Mr. Heislip is here, Crystal Valley Supervisor. We met last week at Crystal Town Hall. A presentation was made by John Wilson and Gary McKean in regards to SNAP grant proposal for Crystal Valley Township Park, or Crystal Valley County Park. And we're going forward with an application for that. Was well received by Crystal. There's been renewed interest in the park, renewed interest in the dam. And also at that meeting, a motion was made, accepted and passed to provide $2,400 to the county to commence engagement with the engineer, James Tiffany, in regards to cost for the repair of the dam. And RPFs have been sent out already for other firms. But I wanted to know where to go from there. Everyone wanted a little skin in the game, and Crystal did vote to put skin in the game. This is the first funding.
So this is a preliminary engineering study.
The cost of the...
I think we see where it goes after that study is completed.
Lee, would you like to add anything to this?
I guess I'd field questions. There's a lot to add. Short history. We've signed a contract to build the road up, Madison Road. Still looking for contributions if you're so willing. There's been a tremendous amount of social media asked for and received. The responses have been overwhelming as far as geographic location. I had no idea there were so many people that had an interest in what goes on at Park. And I'm talking about executives in our local community that would like a place to take their kids and have a fun day. It was overwhelming. What are we doing? We are taking action to help you make a decision that we started on a year ago, and we have a deadline coming up. We wanted skin in the game. I'm ever so grateful to the board to say, yeah, we'll participate, not only on this project, but on the park project, the road project, the farm road project, which I had a meeting on that this morning. That's moving along graciously. We're looking for a little over $5 million to improve our farm roads to service the 7 farmers that do the majority of the farming in our township. As you heard me say before, that's roughly 220 million pounds of product. With a little tooth pulling, they did provide me with their gross revenues. So they're putting about $25 million annually back into the economy of Oceana County. The pot is stirred heavily out there, not stirred with a paddle, but with an outboard motor. I need direction to help our people make decisions with you as a team effort. So we have a check waiting to give to somebody, and we don't know what to do next. I know that you all have had concerns about how we take care of the cost in the future. I think I have a plan for that. I think it's not a difficult plan. I just think that it hasn't been addressed over the last several decades. We're not all going to be here in maybe 10 years. Some of us are young enough to be here, but I think we owe it to the entire county to develop a plan that they can read when we're gone to say, oh, that's what they had in mind, and help them carry the ball forward, so that this ongoing dilemma of how do we pay for the dam, how do we pay for the park, how do we pay for roads, I think we're working on a solution that can be continued. And with that, I don't know what else to say.
Mr. Walker.
Lee, Crystal Township has done by agreeing to pay for that preliminary engineering, just exactly what I was looking for when I did that motion, several months ago. We're moving forward and we're taking those steps. And I think from my standpoint right now, we need to see that preliminary study that comes out, and we need to see the Crystal Township and your plan on what you wanna do, you know. We've got very good representation on our Parks Board, and we've got a very good person who has brought a lot of money in to our parks with the grants that he's filed for. So I think this is a start. This is going in the right direction to resolve what's out there. The engineering and the plan on how we go forward. And that's what I see we need. And I, you know, if anybody else has any comments on it.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah,
Morris?
so what would, I've said this really from the start, what would mean a lot is to see that maintenance plan or that plan looking into the future, like how are we gonna continue, you know, in 2035 when it needs to be maintained again, or, you know, some work needs to be done. So it's not another, you know, whatever, big chunk of money that needs to come just from the county, but it's shared, you know. I would really love to hear the plan, personally, that for me. I'm excited to know that there's something.
I believe that we could put that into the, may I speak?
Yes, sir.
I believe that we could ask Mr. Tiffany, with his depth of knowledge, to provide that for us, and I don't think it would be a problem at all. Would you agree?
Definitely, yeah. This is child's play to the people in the valley. We've blown this so far out of proportion, and we've spent too much time talking about a simple repair. And, you know, the money we've spent in the airport, the money that we've spent in all these other areas, and we've neglected our citizens. And what Lee was talking about with social media, and there's been feelers put out, Lee has gotten back feedback from all over the northern end of the county, and some of us down south, that that park, with this SNAP grant that's being proposed right now, John Wilson is working on it through our Parks Department. Flush toilets, more amenities, boardwalks, new pavilion, to bring that park back up to standards where a family would feel comfortable going and spending an afternoon or day at that park, are on the board right now. And I've never seen so much enthusiasm out of a gentleman named John Wilson, who's worked in the Chicagoland parks for 40 years down there. Yesterday he stopped at my shop, and he had 3 other gentlemen in the truck with him. They had 200 years of combined park experience in that vehicle yesterday, and we chatted a little bit. We have a golden opportunity with excellent individuals who have built parks all over Chicagoland that want to come up here and make that park in Crystal Valley a showpiece. And as I've said before, that is a Depression era dam. It's a WPA dam. It does sit on Indian reservation land, and it will not be removed. So with that being said, we are obligated to continue to repair that dam and keep it in service. It serves as a lamprey barrier. We've already had the lamprey people out there. They're satisfied with what we're doing, and those repairs that Mr. Tiffany has proposed can be done with a skid steer. This is not rocket science.
Paul, may I finish up by saying one thing?
Yes, sir.
May not, will not is a strong word, but I understand your passion for this. Crystal Valley and Crystal Township is on the move. There has been change in what's going on in Crystal Township, probably a lot because of the change in leadership that they have in Crystal Township over the past year. And let me give you the best example that is data-driven example that I can. Our treasurer worked very, very extensively on the land bank, who now can get money for blight removal. Every village, city, and township, supervisor, president, mayor, and every clerk were notified of meetings we had here on how to get money for blight removal. Going forward, Crystal Township looked at blight removal out there, And yesterday, Crystal Township brought in very concise, very complete applications, photographs, signed statements from the property owners. And Crystal Valley is, with their treasurer, is gonna forward those applications to the land bank, the state land bank. We had meetings with the director of the state land bank and the director of the Land Bank Association from Michigan. Crystal Township is the only township or unit of government in the county that followed through, and they're in line to get almost $100,000 in grant money to remove 5 different stressed pieces of property. Crystal Township is on the move. We have townships that are sleeping, and we have one that's on the move right now.
Yeah, I've got to echo what Bob said. Since Lee's come on board out in Crystal, you know, he's unified those 7 large growers. Like he had said, $20 million worth of product. We pull more carrots out of the valley than anyone else probably in West Michigan. Everyone knows the families that are out there. They're multi-generational, 6th-generation farms that have established the asparagus industry in Michigan, in the world. That came right out of Crystal Valley. You know, I can't believe we're still sitting here talking about this when we have $5.2 million of ARPA money have gone through our fingers, and here we are talking about the price of a pickup truck. I'm embarrassed to sit here and talk about this to this degree when we've taken $5.2 million and spread it all over this county, and we have not taken care of our own county park, of which we're obligated to. And I think the commissioners owe this to the county and to Crystal to support the efforts of Mr. Heislip, the Coxes, the Greiners, the Homans, the Schaefers, the Ruggles, and every other family out there that wants to see that pond and dam remain where it is. Mr. Beggs.
Question. So, what are you asking for today?
I think we're just making a statement with Crystal Township.
So we're just having a discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
we're
we're waiting for the data.
Okay.
And
And the request for proposals I heard mentioned, so these are requests for proposals for a cost of estimate that have gone out to Mr. Tiffany and any other interested party?
May I?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
2 different subjects, so let's split those. We have 5 projects going on, so the one that's important today is the dam, and we have a check waiting to go to Mr. Tiffany through you, I presume. So that's primary to this minute, so we can get him started on his project. Stop the line there. The second part is Mr. Wilson's project is on the park.
Okay.
We have the opportunity to utilize the lack of population, the lack of income in our township, and a whole checklist of things that makes us a primary respondent to get this SNAP grant, is that what it's called?
Yes, sir.
And we're working at a fever pitch to get a 38-page instructional proposal put together for presentation at the end of the month. And that's where we have it, as they call it, RFP. Our staff is working overtime to be at the township hall to receive those certified responses. We know through Mr. Wilson that we have to date them, stamp them, time them, and do things that we're not used to out there. But that's what we're looking for, is the estimates back on the park project.
Okay. All right. So, okay. We've made mention around this table before that we haven't had an RFP for the proposals that Mr. Tiffany has given us. And so, can we, and I'm just asking the question because I don't like lawyers, but Mr. Erickson has addressed Mr. Tiffany and he's done this work, but we haven't asked for that information from anybody else. Can we do that without asking for a proposal, request for proposals?
The only key odds that we have to that, Mr. Begg, is that we did release proposals for this. We did accept the one engineering firm that did this, and they're the ones that came in with $1 million. So we've already released it. People had the opportunity to
Okay.
bid on it.
So we've covered that base with.
Covered, I feel as though we've covered that base,
Okay.
personally.
All right. Okay.
We blew all that money. We're throwing good money after bad right
Yep.
now.
So, Mr. Tiffany's fees for the next step are what?
Plan submittal is $2,400. Field work, when he comes out, does his boring and everything, $67.50.
Bottom line, it's good.
Yeah, the bottom line is 24 grand.
Okay.
In a round number, you know, and honestly, with $5.2 million going through our ARPA funds, I feel this board's obligated to spend the entire amount, including the $2,400 that Crystal's already put on the table to make this happen. And if you know the guys I'm talking about in Crystal, you know that they can come in and write a check at the drop of a hat. But they've been writing property tax checks, they've been writing payroll checks, they've been supporting the agriculture, the asparagus industry, and everything else out there, and they do not feel that this board should go out and tax them any further on taking care of the obligation that we have, and that is that dam, that park, and that pond.
So for $24,000, that dam is fixed, according.
No, we will have, about 80 grand is our understanding it's gonna cost when it finally does come to repairing the dam.
For $24,000, he's gonna give us a solid estimate of what it's gonna cost to repair the dam.
And oversee all of the construction and handle it from A to Z. And he's a boots on the ground kind of guy. He's not sending assistants up.
Paul, I think we need to move on, but I'm gonna end it just me saying this. We need to let things move forward. We need to keep our eyes all open, but we have to remember that when Mr. Tiffany gets done, before we can put a shovel onto that property out there, it has to be approved by Eagle.
Yep.
And Mr. Tiffany knows all of the players at Eagles on a first name basis. So there's nothing that can be done until all of that comes. There will be none of the construction or anything else until we get the approval from Eagle. And don't be surprised if it's a year or a year and a half from now, because that's how Eagle works. Do you think that's a fair statement, Nate?
I think that's very accurate, and I appreciate you saying that. Mr. Tiffany felt very comfortable in his approach, and I think that's why he approached it with not only giving you the bid, but taking over the complete process of making it come to fruition. And I think he'd be very capable of saying, this is what the likely maintenance should be for the next, your lifetime, my lifetime. Where do we want to stop? Who can project what's going to happen in 30 years? But I'm very comfortable in what I've seen and heard. Remind me, please, isn't the ultimate goal to make a communication with Eagle saying, this is what we want to do as a community, this is our plan, and we have to have that into them by June or July?
We have set that deadline.
Okay.
That was not a deadline set by Eagle.
I'm sorry?
We set that deadline. We asked for 6 months.
Okay.
And I'm sure if they know that the engineering is being done, you know.
I don't see any dirt or anything happening this year, and who knows, maybe even not next year, but at least we have a plan, like we're building a good house. We know when to have the crew show up, what it's gonna cost, and who's gonna pay for it.
Yes, Mr. Beggs.
One more question. So what's our next step, and when are we gonna take it?
Our next step is to wait until the preliminary study is done by Mr. Tiffany.
But we haven't approved that expenditure.
Well, that's the Crystal Valley.
Just the
Crystal
$2,400?
Valley's They're
That's
paying
that's
for
their
it.
funding.
Our board took action and said we want to
Okay,
move forward.
so that's the preliminary, not the full-blown 24,000. Okay.
Yeah, and in that, you know, was the field work, and the permitting process, and those things won't come until we have a preliminary plan.
What does the preliminary get us? not against it, I'm just wondering what.
No,
I'm just trying to figure out a timeline and action steps.
Yeah, with his basic assumptions, he does not itemize that, that plan submittal. So I guess that is a question we'll ask Mr. Tiffany. But he does outline his construction observations and his assumed construction to take place in the fall of 2023. So he is looking at, moving forward on a timeline of that nature.
Okay.
But we had wondered if we pass that money through the county coffers, should that money come to the county as it is a county-owned?
Well, it's county parks, I think it goes, my opinion would it goes through the county checkbook.
I think it would be cleaner for everybody if it goes through the county. We can have, and it's probably time that we have the treasurer set up a line item for the Crystal Park, because we're not only gonna have the dam, but we're going to have everything, and set up a line item in there, however they do that, and that money can come into us, and then we can do the expenditure.
Do you think it has to go through the county, or would that be a direct contract with the township?
County property. So to keep it clean, I think it would be better.
Yeah, but it's in the township too as well.
But they don't have the deed for the property.
True.
That I felt it
Yeah.
need go through the
Yeah.
county,
Yeah.
through the county parks.
Cause if the county's gonna pay for repairs, working off of a study that was paid for by the township, I think it just gets messy.
This is a
Yeah.
cooperated effort.
Yeah.
Yep.
If
And
we-
that motion was
if
made
we-
by Kyle Ullman,
If we
so-
agree to agree, cooperative efforts can work fine. So, but I think we need Paul, we need to finish up.
Oh, thank you very
No,
much.
Lee
So-
had one more comment.
One more thing, and it does have to do with accounting. Should we be fortunate enough to get this Spark grant, now we're looking at something with a couple of commas in it. If that ends up having to go through the township, of course we have to work with you somehow. I don't know how that would work out, but it's something to.
Traditionally, the Spark grant would come through the county,
Okay.
if it's county property.
Yeah.
It'd probably be very similar to the Shelby
Yes.
Park project, yeah.
And that was Mr.
Yeah.
Wilson's project also.
Yeah.
That we've-
Mr. Wilson did say, don't worry about it, I can handle it. Well, you know me well enough to know me now that I worry about everything, so at least the bait is out there and we know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Erston.
Would there be any public comment? Hearing none, I'll adjourn the Property, Environment, and Economic Development Committee. Mr. Hardy.
We're gonna wait a couple seconds here.
All set.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Administration Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Morse?
Here.
Mr. Banks?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
I ask for approval of the meeting minutes from May 11th.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Morris,
I'll support.
second by Beggs. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, same. Motion carried. I'd ask for approval of the agenda.
I'll make that.
Excuse me, back up, I'm sorry. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, ask for approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Support
Motion
Walker.
by Morris, support by Walker. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Is there any public comment at this time for the Finance and Administration Committee? All right, hearing none. Ms. Biard, Michigan Association of Counties 125th Annual Anniversary Resolution.
The Michigan Association of Counties sent out a template for their 125th anniversary, and we're asking for support from the counties, and they received several of them, and so Mr. Walker said to place this on the agenda.
It's been adopted by, almost 40% of the counties, and I think it's just the
Yeah.
right thing to support it.
That was good. All right, thank you very much.
Did you
Oh,
say
I'm
that?
sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you say Mac sent out a template for the resolution to honor themselves?
Yep.
Okay.
So you want to keep it right.
They
I
wrote
just
it.
wanna make sure I heard that
They
right.
wrote it for us.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, any other comment?
Membership dues.
Questions?
Here's the nice things to say about me.
All right, moving on, Commissioner Morris, sheriff wage discussion.
If I write a resolution, by the way, can I have you guys adopt that about me?
Yep.
Depending on what's in it.
Okay, so as far as the sheriff's wage discussion goes, the personnel committee, or the chair and the vice chair and Ms. Biard met last week, and or a couple weeks ago, we talked about it. But first of all, before we even get into the specifics, I just want to say that this discussion is not about the person or the professionals that we're talking about here. This is all about the position and the financial puzzle we have here. So I just want to be very clear about that, because we have a fantastic sheriff and undersheriff, both as people and as professionals. And just for those maybe listening, maybe you don't know as much about the background, so I'll just give the background again. As of right now, starting actually last year, our undersheriff actually is compensated more than the sheriff's position is. And then this year, the undersheriff got another bump, so it was even a more increase of about $3,000. So, like I said, Commissioner Erickson and Ms. Biard and myself met and decided to address the situation. And so I'll actually just read the resolution that we are proposing, with one little tweak that I'm adding, and I'll point out what tweak that is after I read it. So the resolution would be to temporarily freeze the undersheriff at his current step and increase the sheriff's salary to $91,000, retroactive January 1. So that's the piece that I added without Commissioner Erickson and Ms. Biard's knowing. Started thinking about that piece of, like, when does this actually take effect. So the undersheriff is at like $90,674, something like that. Then the sheriff's wage would go to $91,000, so that the compensation is more. It's more of a principle thing than anything. The fact that the top dog, really, so to speak, should be compensated the most, because the buck stops with that position. So that's why we decided the recommendation that we have for the resolution. So,
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
This was what speaking strictly for myself, because I was on the board when this started. The sheriff had his wages because it was so much higher than the other sheriffs. It was frozen for 3 years, as we all know. And at the same time, we had a wage study, and we had budgeted wage increases that compounded from the undersheriff's position. And I totally agree with Mr. Morris. This is not anything about the individual, it's about the position. We all thought, and I thought, it was a very good laid plan with the wage study and everything. This is one area where it got away from us. And we can't turn back the clock, but I think we need to make an adjustment here and go forward and let it work itself out. So I think the personnel committee came out with the best. There is no perfect scenario, but I think they came out with the best possible scenario that we can come up with.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes, Mr. Big.
I am in full support that I think that the sheriff should be compensated more than the people that serve under him. because of the responsibility and a number of other things. I think where I would disagree with the proposal is two places. I cannot, with my integrity intact, freeze the undersheriff's wages. The wage study was done, a plan was set in place, and this isn't a rollback of his wages, but it's awful close in my opinion. So I don't think with my integrity intact I can say the undersheriff, and again the position, not the person, should have his wages frozen on a wage scale that was set into motion. I also don't think the $352 gap between the undersheriff and sheriff is enough to satisfy the need for that gap between the superior and the under. So there's budgetary concerns with every decision we make, but I don't agree that the undersheriff's wages should be frozen, and I think in round numbers something more like a $3,000 plus or minus gap between the two is more appropriate. I faced a similar situation in my own business not that long ago, and not to talk numbers, but I gave a 10% raise to a supervisor because it became apparent, and this isn't, in my situation, it was a salaried employee to an hourly employee, with the hourly employee attaining overtime, which isn't the case here, but it became apparent there was certainly an issue there where a superior was making less than the supervised, and that's not acceptable in my opinion. So that's my piece on it. I don't think I cannot vote to freeze the undersheriffs, and I can't support such a small gap between the two.
Mr. Walker.
I'm only going to comment on one of those, Mr. Beggs. I do believe that in September and October, when we sit down, we need to take a very hard look at the sheriff's wages for starting the fiscal year 2024. And we have data on where the other ones are. We've all seen the data on where the other undersheriff, all the undersheriffs in the 5-county alliance are, and where the sheriff is. And I think that we're gonna do a little bit right now, and I think that we need to take a very close look at the sheriff's wages. Primary thing we should look at budget time.
Mr. Erickson.
And yeah, it's a dilemma. Nobody saw this coming. It was poor planning to begin with. Increasing an elected official's annual salary in Oceana County would go across the board with all elected officials. So when that day comes, when we discuss an elected official's salary, we will be talking about all of them.
Why?
We can't arbitrarily take and move one up without looking at all elected officials.
I disagree, but I'm just going to say I know that the judges make a lot more than that right now, and
Judges,
whether elected or not. I'd like to. Are you set, or do you want to continue, or I want to add a couple things? That's all.
Well, I see the need right here. If we're arbitrarily going to bump an elected official's salary, then yeah, we definitely need to consider all the rest of them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess one of the things I agree with Mr. Beggs that I don't think that the undersheriff position to take a hit, because through the step increases that were set and the previous wages that were set, it's his fault. Those step increases are based on experience. And I'm going to shoot some numbers out, Phil. You probably have them too. And currently the sheriff's wages is $87,645. The undersheriff's current wage is $90,648, which is a $3,003.90 differential. January 1, 2024, the step increase to the undersheriff would be an additional $3,479, which would bring his annual salary up to $94,127.90. I kind of agree that I think the differential there, because the sheriff's position, as probably as well as the undersheriff's position, isn't a 9 to 5 or a 35-hour-a-week job. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for all the extra load that gets put on them. I understand too, it's also the biggest department that we operate in the county, with employees, the jail, the regulations through the state, through the feds, and everything else. My proposal would be a little bit different, and I'll just throw this out. Right now, I would propose an immediate 6% increase in the sheriff's wage, which would raise him $2,254.80, which would be a 2.48% differential between his pay and the sheriff's pay, or between the undersheriff's pay. And then as of January 1st, 2024, a 3% increase, which again would put him at $2,823.84, or 3% above the undersheriff's wage. And I don't, Phil, I don't know whether we would, my suggestion would be not to make it retroactive. I understand what you're saying, but anyway, that was.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
Respectfully, I understand where you and Mr. Beggs are both coming from, but we looked at the wages for those two positions in the 5 counties, and we're gonna be right back in to where we were before, when the sheriff's wages were frozen in this county. We're gonna push ourselves right up there again, and the judges' wages, I understand what you're saying, but those are set by the state, and we don't pay those.
Well, I understand too, but I also know that Newaygo County Sheriff makes over $100 grand.
You know why?
No.
They have federal prisoners in the federal jail over there, and the criteria that he has to do lodging those federal prisoners is immense.
I guess what I'm saying though is that and I agree with Mr. Beggs on this, is that you can't have the head of a department making less than a subordinate. I'm sorry, but.
Other than in private industry, if you own a business and you have a commissioned salesperson and they make more money annually than you do, you accept that and you pay that check.
But that's a commission, that's not an employee, so it's a commission sale. So the harder the salesman works, the more jobs he brings in, the more profitability he makes, and he takes a portion of that profitability. Where in the sheriff's position, the more arrests he makes, he doesn't gain anything.
No, and Craig's on, he's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So no, we do understand, but we're
right.
Pandora's box with the other elected officials.
But I think annually too, what we're talking about amount-wise is, it's not $20,000, it's not $30,000, it's a lot less than that. Overall, to correct an error that was caused, I'm going to say, I don't know, by our board or the previous board, or not watching, where the salary caps went.
And we'll be coming into contract negotiations again.
We have 2 years left on contract.
Yeah, we got that's
so. But we'll see these steps.
Those are 5-year contracts. So I think we have 2 years left.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes, Ms. Biggs.
Mr. Walker mentioned, we may be coming into a place where we may need to freeze the sheriff's wages. And
I said we did for 3 years.
Oh, you did?
We did. That's what got us here.
Gotcha.
We were going for 3 years because our sheriff was making $15,000 more than the Mason County sheriff.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and if I didn't state that properly,
okay.
I apologize.
And if we end up in that situation again, if I'm correct, the undersheriff, this is the last step that's available.
Right.
So there won't. Is
Right,
that
Mr.
correct?
Beck?
So there's.
That's my understanding.
The undersheriff, this is the last step, and that's the last increase, aside from cost of living increases that we decide. So what we're setting up is a situation where we have the correct differential. We've reached kind of the top of where the supervised can't overstep the supervisor. If we, I like Commissioner Hardy's recommendation. I think that's appropriate, and so that would be my opinion. I'm not. I think I could articulate fairly easily why I'm not concerned about the other elected officials, and some of those reasons have already been brought up. So I can't vote in favor of the recommendation.
Mr. Hardy, I guess we move on and we find out at the regular meeting.
Okay, and, Mr. Boris, there was a couple of ways that I looked at this thing and put it together. I know the step itself, if you do an interim step of 6% and a January 1 step of 3% on top of that, if I took that total increase, it's right around $9,000 is what it works out to be, but that would be through the rest into the January step, I should say, is where it would be. So it's less than that right now, which if you're going to go retroactive on that thing, but I think it's a position that deserves more of a gap. I mean, literally everything falls back on the sheriff for the department legally and, everything else. So anyway, that's just my recommendation. So.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes.
The last thing I would like to say about this is when we get in working on budget, when we're working on the top paid people in the county, I do not believe that we should be looking at percentage increases anymore. I think we should be looking at dollar increases. Because those things, when you do percentage increases, they just multiply and they multiply and they multiply. I would much rather, if we're gonna give somebody a raise, instead of giving them a percentage raise, give them 500, 1,000, 2,000.
Right, and I think that's correctable next budget thing too, and and I don't know when the steps were actually implemented. Was those?
About 5 years.
About 5 years, okay.
17, I think.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yes, Phil.
So I'd like to say I don't love the proposal. I just think it's the best of the worst, in my opinion. And I'll say, like, I totally agree. I mean, what's $300 some difference between the sheriff and undersheriff? It's a principle thing. It's really what it is. It's not really, for me, it's a principle thing. And then whether that's right or wrong, it's just what it is. And then the inflation of wages. They don't just affect these two positions. It affects across the board, across counties. Because they look at what our sheriff and undersheriff may. And then should that matter to us or not? Maybe not. But it does. And then other county electeds here are going to look at, okay, well, like this is so the sheriff will be getting, if this resolution or this proposal is passed. He will actually be getting a 6% increase this year from, if you include the increase that we budgeted last year. So, which is to me, a pretty reasonable, significant increase. If we go, let's say, I think we gotta do this 1 year at a time, but if we look at next year, or let's say the undersheriff gets his raise, his step increase to $94,000. And we want to go to $97,000, and to keep that $3,000 gap between the sheriff and the undersheriff, that's a 13.2% increase.
Well, it's a 3%. It's a 3% over the 6% increase.
Oh yeah, so it would be around there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's in the teens as far as the increase from. It's not quite a year over year, but so it's just significant, and how that's going to impact our overall budget, and then the overall, how it impacts other salaries. That's where I feel like we need to keep that balance between those two ideas.
And I know we didn't cause the issue. The issue kind of crept up behind us, but again, it's if it's about 10.5% if you did everything today. It's not 14 or 15%. But the other thing is that I think a part of that resolution, we're kind of we're telling the undersheriff he's going to take a hit on something that really is owed to them has been in the make for 5 years. And because of this issue, we're asking that person to take a hit financially on it, which is, you know, $3,000 some odd a year for something that really isn't his fault.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I just in 2019, the undersheriff's position was receiving $71,000 just 4 years ago. This year it's that's $19,000 increase in 4 years, which is deserved. But to me, it's enough. It's significant. You know, it's not like it's been like $7,000-8,000 increase over 4 years. It's been, you know, almost $20,000. So that's, I understand. I do. You know, he does deserve.
That's not his fault. That's
right.
Previous board fault for doing step raises and us not keeping up with it. I mean, so correcting the problem, I don't think should fall back on the undersheriff taking the hit of something that was. I mean, Phil, I'm going to promise you a raise at the first of the year, and then I'm going to penalize you because I forgot he made more or less money than you did, and that's how I look at it. Is you can't have somebody that is in a department head position.
I respectfully don't look at it that way at all, but I've said enough.
Okay.
I worked in private industry long enough. That's enough. And I looked at the overall wages. That's enough. I've said enough.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
It's a red herring that we've been handed here, and you know, 19 grand over 4 years. You know, the key word most all my life was COLA. And if you didn't get COLA, you felt that you didn't get your deserved raise. You know, without any increase, it was just cost of living. You know, maybe we need to readdress this in our next budget and get this thing squared up a little bit more.
Well, and remember, for those of us who were at the Alliance meeting, Manistee County has hired a firm to come in and do an assessment of all of their salaries and all of their wages and where they fit within counties the same population. They're in the process of doing that right now. And I'm sure that Jeff would share that information with us when we get to budget time.
Anyone else? All right. Tracy, Administrator's review of selected claims for payment and Administrator report.
The selected claims have been provided to you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, if not, I provided an administrator's report, but also wanted to add, one, I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Morse and Mr. Erickson for sitting in on the second interviews for the HR finance position. That person will be starting next Thursday, and I will bring her in to introduce her once we have a board meeting at that time. So, and then the only other thing that I had was I reached out to 4 of our surrounding counties, Mason, Lake, Newaygo, and Muskegon, about the materials management. I'm sure you've been hearing some things about that coming down the pipe, but we're required to provide a plan, then we have to start implementing. There has to be a committee set up. There's 11 people. They're talking about elected officials and then specialists in certain areas as it relates to materials management. And we have the ability to get more funding if we are in a multi-county group as it relates to the materials management and the plan. So I reached out to the 4 administrators and asked them what their plan was, if they'd like to meet and talk it through, and we've set up a meeting for end of June, which will be here in Oceana County. And we'll be talking that through, and I'll be bringing more information to you as we get we have more meetings.
I'd just like to comment on that. I was just going to I'm going to ask you issue, I understand it, it's a good thing, I'm glad you're sitting down and talking to them, but we're gonna have to proceed with caution.